Hi, I'm Gary Younge.
And I'm Carys and Gary.
Every week, Carys and I will be talking about those stories in the news that are overreported and the ones that go completely under the radar and aren't being talked about enough.
This is Over the Top, Under the Radar. Happy birthday, Gary. Well, belated happy birthday.
Yeah, we are at a midpoint between my birthday and yours.
Yes, we're both January babies.
You're a Capricorn too, right?
No, you're a Capricorn.
I am a
Capricorn.
Capricorn.
I am the first day of Aquarius.
Are you?
I'm an Aquarius, free-spirited, quirky, cares about social justice. And you, my friend, are a Capricorn, trusting. I can't remember.
No, Capricorns are like anal pains in the arse. It's true. It's true. When they do those matchups and they say like, who would go better with who? Nobody ever wants to sleep with a Capricorn or be anywhere near them.
So, Capricorn, just stay on your own. Did you get any good presents? I didn't get you anything. I'm sorry.
This year I got alcohol, some flowers. You know, I'm of an age. It's not really an age where people give you presents that often.
Are you post-present?
I am post-present. I remember the absolute kind of almost out-of-body experience of being a kid on your birthday. And now, I worked most of the day.
Oh, no, don't work on your birthday.
When I was going into my birthday, I was thinking, oh, man, am I going to have to work on my birthday? A real bummer. And then I was like, but you used to go to school on your birthday.
I lean into my birthdays. I've got the birthday before a big birthday this year. So... trying to not. I'm 39.
Yeah. Figured that out.
So I'm trying to end on my 30s, trying to not freak out about that.
Is there any sense of dread about that, about becoming 40?
Oh, yeah, a lot of dread. I have obviously many friends in their 40s and older who do not have a lot of patience for that. But yeah, no, terrified. Probably not best to get into on the podcast, but no, it's stressful. I just, as you say, as a kid, birthdays are joyous and presents. And then as you get older, it's just another step to the grave, isn't it? There you go. That was some upbeat chat. One of our production team would say to keep it upbeat this week. There you go.
Another step towards the grave. I so look forward to your birthday do now. Nemo from Patreon about Musk. Nemo writes, as we try to put our fingers in the dam of misinformation, it's just springing up elsewhere constantly. And I think this is designed to exhaust and demoralize us.
Thanks for the comment, Nemo. I think you're completely right. So we had one from Pat on X that is for me. Just started listening to the new episode. Who is the author of the fairy books? They sound interesting. You're right, Pat. They are interesting. I might do a post about this because I feel like I've learned a lot in my new foray into fairy books, romantasy, some call it. But the famous series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, or ACOTAR, as those of us in the fandom call it, is written by a woman called Sarah J. Maas. I mean, maybe they'll go in the newsletter, but I'll also tweet out my favourite fairy-related authors. Thanks for asking, Pat. Gary's never asked.
No.
And you can find us all over social media. We're on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and X. Our handle is @over_under_pod_.
Big shout out to the people who signed up to Patreon this week. Our new sign-ups, Briony, Nemo, Fen, and Sean. Thank you so much to all of you. We have 407 Patreon supporters. We honestly couldn't do this without you. We struggle as it is, so we are very grateful for your support. And we now have a new target of 500 Patreon supporters by the end of February.
So if you do have the money to support us on Patreon, keep the podcast running, pay everyone that's involved, please go to the Patreon website. Packages start at just £5 a month plus VAT. You'll get access to our weekly bonus episodes, a newsletter, the exclusive and very fun Over Under WhatsApp community. You can search Over the Top, Under the Radar on Patreon. And as Gary would say, put your money where your ears are. My over the top is Reform UK. the recent poll put out by YouGov showing that if we had a general election tomorrow, which we won't, Reform would be the second largest party. So I think it would be hard to have missed this if you've been reading political news. But YouGov did a poll between the 12th and the 13th of January on people's voting intentions for the next general election. And so it was a poll of about 2,200 adults. So it's enough to be statistically significant, but it's not a huge sample. So 26% of people would vote for Labour, 25% of people would vote for Reform UK, 22% of people would vote for the Conservatives, 14% of people would vote Lib Dem, and 8% of people would vote Green. That's a pretty big switch from the general election when Labour was on 35%, the Tories were on 24%, and Reform was on 15%. This has been pretty universally written up as Reform could be the party of opposition at the next election. Reform is popular with young people. Reform is going to defeat the Tories. I guess there are a couple of things that I think media analysis and commentary is missing with this. The first thing, this is a pretty small poll. Secondly, I think what we're seeing at the moment is there are stories that the media likes to tell. And for whatever reason, the media likes to talk about Nigel Farage and likes to talk about his antagonism with Labour and the Tories. But for me, looking at that poll, the more interesting things are how much support Labour has lost and how much support the Greens have gained. So I think there's a bit of Westminster bubble really honing in on a media line that isn't that statistically robust and just reinforces what they already want to say, which is, Farage is on the rise. My final point is Farage himself is not that popular. So Reform, if we ignored the fact that it was UKIP and was the Brexit party under another name with very similar colour schemes, it is quite dramatic how quickly Reform has surged. In the first past the post system, with a general election 4 years away, these numbers don't mean much. But it's also cherry picking numbers from some more interesting polling, in my opinion, which is the favourability of Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has a net unfavourable in the UK. So this is from January 2025, also from YouGov. 62% of British people have an unfavourable opinion of Nigel Farage. 30% of people have a favourable opinion of him. Those numbers are better than Keir Starmer's. More people think favourably of Nigel Farage than Keir Starmer. More people think favourably of Nigel Farage than Ed Davey. Interestingly, when you get to people like Carla Denyer, who's the leader of the Green Party, most people just don't have an opinion of her at all because she doesn't get written about that much. There's a real obsession with Nigel Farage. He's already an attention seeker. The media constantly gives him more attention for free. The reality is he's still a pretty polarizing figure. I'm not pretending there are many political figures in British politics that people trust or rate, but there is a revulsion of Nigel Farage that presumably will come into play come election time. The best we can tell, at least a quarter of people made up their mind about who to vote in the weeks before the general election last July. So the idea that a poll now about a general election, which can't happen for several years, is anything more than a bit of grist for the Westminster Mill, I think is overblowing it. I worry that what we're really doing is manifesting a Reform victory. We should be worried about Reform's numbers. We should be worried about the Welsh Senate elections next year. We can also give this man and his party so much airtime and so much free media that they effectively become the opposition before they've earned that right.
I take your point about we're a long way away from an election. It's a first past the post system. Calm down, basically. Kind of, isn't that always the case with polls? It's we're just giving you a little snapshot for right now. I wonder, what should the media do with that poll with regard to Reform?
If journalists can't write up polls, what will anyone in Westminster do? So I think it's less that the poll makes headlines. I think that Reform is getting a disproportionate amount of press from any poll that mentions it. And especially, without naming specific podcasts, there was a real deep dive on, is Reform already the party of opposition? A lot on, Nigel Farage's TikTok, meaning there's a surge in youth votes, even though overwhelmingly, generationally, younger voters still lean left. So I think it's less talking about the poll, but like over egging the pudding. Really, you need to see it in the longer term context. I'm not saying it's bad for Farage, but it's not as good as people are implying. And when I looked at the poll, I was much more interested in, for example, the Green numbers, the Lib Dem numbers, and what that might mean for a future parliament.
I'm kind of also intrigued by the splits within Reform, within that world. The kind of Musk says he doesn't kind of think Farage should be running the party. I think a few councillors resigned recently at his leadership. We do understand these formations, these right-wing formations, as being solid when they're actually kind of fractures.
Yeah, and I think it is terrifying that he is, even with his net negative approval ratings, one of the most popular political figures in the country. And it is terrifying that his party is poised, if this poll is right, to be like a major party of opposition. I guess the story I think that isn't being told, as we endlessly obsess over Reform and whether Elon Musk is retweeting Farage and could, this sort of far right party that still has a small number of MPs. Other stories like Labour's collapse, complete lack of a honeymoon period. Keir was never that popular, but people have turned on him pretty quickly. Like, the analysis that I've seen suggests that the depression or the reducing the Labour vote is also about losing votes to the Greens and Lib Dems. So that idea of there being a challenge on Labour's left flank, as well as this rising Reform vote, which potentially is taking as many votes from the Tories if we look at how their numbers are. He's scary, he's important, but I don't think he's that interesting. I don't think he warrants this level of constant think pieces. And I don't think his TikTok is that good. There, come at me, Nige.
I said what I said. So my over is that as we speak, there is a peace deal in the offing in the Middle East around Gaza. Now, as we're recording, we don't know if it's going to be sealed or not. The Israelis, as we speak, are umming and ahhing. Netanyahu refusing to call a cabinet meeting until Hamas has made more concessions and so on. So obviously, when I say that the coverage has been over the top, this is one example where I'm talking about the nature of the coverage. Any kind of peace deal that's agreed between Israel and Hamas will, of course, be a welcome thing. Anything that stops the carnage would be a great thing. But first of all, it's a temporary ceasefire. Where I think the media are going over the top is, first of all, they are kind of describing it like it's a done deal and like it's the end. And it's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, really. It might be. All it offers is the opportunity for an end. That's an important thing to remember. But three things, really. The first is that let's say that they have a ceasefire tomorrow, permanent ceasefire. Hallelujah. That would be fantastic. But we then have to move on to the fact that Gaza is still devastated. 9 in 10 homes destroyed or damaged. 46,000 people killed, of whom more than 13,000 are children. Almost every school building in Gaza damaged or destroyed. Less than half of the hospitals even partially functional. We still have to deal with that. And the idea is that Israel had was that it would clear people out of Gaza, and we still have to wait and see. At some point, they would have stopped killing. The question then becomes, what do we have left and what is there left in Gaza? So that's the first point. The second point is that if this is about the security of Israel, where Israel is concerned and its defenders and apologists are concerned, well then, of course, Israel is still not secure. Of course it's not. However many people who were actually in Hamas that they have killed, you have to weigh that against the number of people who have been, young people in particular, who are now wedded to organizations like Hamas because they want revenge, because they've seen their families made. It's not an excuse, but it's no less understandable. It's no less logical than the Israeli response to October the 7th. They will want revenge. And this will not make Israel secure. It never could. And Israel's claimed that they were going to wipe Hamas out for good. I thought we'd seen with war on terror, this war on an abstract noun, that was not going to work. And then the third thing is that with the collapse, in a sense, of any global attachment to international law now, not global attachment, but certainly Western attachment, I kind of like, well, the International Criminal Court might have said that, and the ICJ might have said that, but, let's see. It's terrifying for everybody, or it should be. And it's not that international law was generally being respected or really even was being applied to more powerful nations, but this has been a gross and flagrant flouting of international law, sustained, armed and diplomatically supported by the Brits, by the Americans, and by many of the rest of the West. And that makes us all less safe. And so even as this welcome moment, and it would be a welcome moment, approaches, and I hope that it actually finally arrives, we are going to want to be a little bit proportionate about how we understand what comes next. There's more to peace than just not bombing, and there's more to freedom than just chains or the breaking of chains.
I agree. You can't have too much coverage if a ceasefire deal does get signed. So we're recording on a Thursday. So by the time you listen to this on Friday, you will have a more up-to-date perspective. I guess I still remain skeptical and low trust that the deal will actually be signed and someone won't find a way to blow it up at the last minute. I think the thing that you've pointed out is the ceasefire and a form of peace is necessary but not sufficient to resolve what's going on in the region. I guess it's hard to feel optimistic about this deal until it's done, because you also have to trust that, what happens next, which is the important bit, is going to count and is going to mean that Palestinians' homes are rebuilt. I don't know how you begin to rebuild when you've lost so much and so many people. I guess the other thing that is in my head is just Trump and the fact that in less than a week's time, he'll be president again, and whether we trust him and this deal. Is this deal because he wants a deal? Is he going to delay the ceasefire so that he can come in and say he did it? Yeah, I guess it exposes how jaded I feel about a lot of the politics of the region.
I mean, obviously we don't trust him. I don't trust Netanyahu, and frankly, I don't trust Hamas particularly. I don't trust any of the people involved in this. The timing of it is intriguing, with the inauguration coming, both Trump and Biden claiming credit for it. I'm not much interested in that in terms of them claiming credit for it. I am interested in the dynamics, because Trump is amoral. That can work in a range of ways. And he sells himself as a man who can do a deal and who doesn't want America involved in these foreign wars. Paradoxically, he also wants to, invade Greenland and, he's looked covetously at Canada. The degree to which he's maybe not wedded to supporting Israel in the way that Biden is.
There's also this rumor that, have you heard this one, that Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize?
No.
So the story goes that Obama got a Peace Prize, as we probably all remember. Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, and Trump would also like a Nobel Peace Prize, goes the rumor, and that he thinks that getting peace in the Middle East would be one way he could get one, and had told his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to get him a Peace Prize.
Given
of all the things he wants.
Yeah, given all the things he wants and given who he is, the idea that he might be driven by that as opposed to like all the other crazy shit in his life and in his mind. Yeah, I'm not sure that's so bad. And I also think it was a completely weird idea that they gave it to Obama at all. But certainly, Yeah.
But if it's provoked the competitive spirit,
I have a drone.
Yeah.
So my under for this week is gold miners in South Africa. There are, I have learned, about 30,000 what are effectively miners in illegal mines in South Africa. They're known as zama-zamas. And it tells you something. If I tell you zama-zama means people who take their chance. They mostly work in illegal mines around the northeast mining belt. Not that long ago, the South African police launched an operation called Valam Godi, which means plug the hole. And what they did with these miners was that they blocked supplies of food, water, and medicine from the people who were in the mines to try and flush them out. The miners started dying of starvation, of dehydration. Thanks to some protests, a court ordered the government to actually facilitate a rescue operation. The government's position was they'll come out soon enough, and if they don't, they'll die, so they'll have to, which seems pretty tough to me, pretty unfair. So they had to facilitate a rescue operation as a result, and the numbers keep changing and they're a bit murky, but it looks like more than 100 people have been brought up dead. And the campaigning organization that is working for these miners to get recognition, to get them out safely, to stop police harassment, is that there could be between 400 and 800 people still down there alive. A lot of people actually learned about it. I did quite a lot of work in South Africa over the years, and one of my colleagues who also worked there alerted me to it. I've been following it over the last week, and it's really awful. And there are three things I want to talk about there. The first is the sheer desperation. These are mostly, not all, but migrants, some of them undocumented. We talk about immigration here in Britain and in the West, like, refugees and asylum seekers, and they all want to come here and so and so. Actually, most of the pressure where migration, asylum seeking, refugees, it's not even close to the West. The biggest pressure is always in these poorer countries. One of the many things this illustrates is just the absolute desperation that exists and the degree to which, if we're going to share this planet, then if you have people who are that desperate, then, really bad things are going to happen. The second is that the government's defense of this is it's a crime against the economy, that they are stealing our resources. I think, okay, but that, first of all, is the economy more important than people? And secondly, do you not want to get at the people who own the mines and make the profit? These people aren't bringing in millions of millions. These people are working to survive. And it's one of those situations where if you want to do something about this, you're going to need to go to the people who are running the mines, not the people who are working in them, and think that starving them out is the way to do it. It's exceptionally cruel. So, yeah, this really awful understanding of the economy being more important than people. And thirdly, the Zama-Zamas, they produce approximately 10% of South Africa's gold. So once again, in a range of ways, because some of that gold is coming here, we are implicated. Not all of us. It's the South African government's decision to do this, but enough of us. I'd really like to trace some of that gold from these impoverished migrant workers, often undocumented, in illegal mines, to the necks and ring fingers and so on of the places where they end up.
Yeah, it's hard to think what to say other than what an awful tragedy it is. I think it does throw into stark relief how challenging it is to see undocumented people who are in a country without a valid work visa. I don't love the phrase undocumented migrants, but this idea that the enemy to all of our progress and economic growth and safety and housing are people who are in the country, whatever country it is, illegally, really fundamentally misunderstands what it is to be undocumented. And I guess this is a very powerful and painful example of that. If you are in a country without papers, you're not stealing people's jobs. You're doing jobs that are super unsafe and not well paid, or you're doing things cash in hand. So the idea that some of the people who are among the most exploited in the world are causing problems for other people, I think is thrown into pretty stark relief by this story. And yeah, hard to hear that the South African government is thinking about it in terms of money.
I mean, it's very disappointing that the South African government, who, we praise in other ways at different times, but that they would take such a callous position that it takes a court to say, you're going to have to go in and save those people that you are deliberately starving and dehydrating. And there's also something about the way that it's about the way that these people are denied some sort of sense of basic humanity. And there's a mirror of this, of the crossings in the Mediterranean, when they decided that the way to stop the crossings in the Mediterranean was to not go and rescue people when they were drowning. And that if they didn't go and rescue people, then they would stop coming. And Aylan Kurdi, the little Turkish boy, Kurdish maybe, but the wee boy who gets washed up, his body washed up on a shore, and it takes that to prick your conscience. And you're like, well, how did you think this was going to work out? And this is doing a similar thing, that poor people who have to cross borders to work in the most treacherous circumstances are denied their humanity, when actually kind of things that they're doing are affirming a sense of humanity. They want to live. They want to live so bad that they will risk their lives to work for a pittance. And this is the way they're treated. So DBF saying.
So my under the radar is, it's a few days old now, but other companies have joined in, so I think it's still current, is Meta's decision to roll back on its diversity programs, or diversity, equity, inclusion, as some call it, DEI. There have been a few American companies that have announced that they are rolling back on their diversity practices. So basically that's like putting time and money into making sure that the people who work for you reflect the world. So, making sure that you have and promote women in your company, or people from different ethnic backgrounds. Diversity can include making sure your workplace isn't homophobic. Just a few examples. So Meta had a memo that was leaked saying that due to a shifting legal and policy landscape, they were going to be scaling back their DEI efforts. So a couple of things I want to say about this. First of all, this isn't even like a slightly coded nod toward Meta and companies like Amazon trying to like cozy up to Donald Trump. And I just think the bootlicking in this is wild. We won't even get into Mark Zuckerberg's chain and general aesthetic at the moment. But like, I think that the craven way that tech companies and other big businesses are sucking up to Donald Trump, it's just gross. And I also just think it's like low-key pathetic. Trump clearly likes bootlicking, but I don't know that it's a super strategic move to, as soon as Trump gets back into the White House, be like, yes, of course, forget this woke nonsense. Like, what next? They're going to deny climate change. I mean, there is some evidence to suggest some companies are scaling back on their climate change investments. So I think it's just like to, use language that these super online tech bros would understand. I think it's mid, and I think it's giving beta, not sigma. I think the second thing that I want to say is these companies are not good at diversity, equity, inclusion. They have made some progress by investing in it, but almost to a man, their workforces are still predominantly male. Their leadership teams are incredibly white. Companies like Meta and certainly Amazon under-index on all different ethnic groups, other than they've got a decent number of Asian employees, if you look at Meta specifically. But like, these companies are not that diverse and are not that equitable. There have been a ton of whistleblowing scandals around Meta and other tech firms. Employment lawyers say that, technology companies are pretty notorious for not treating their workers fairly and equally. And then the final thing I want to say is like DEI and like the practice of not only hiring and promoting white men, it's not apolitical, but there's a pretty robust body of evidence at this point that diverse workforces deliver for the bottom line. So like McKinsey have done a ton of work on this. Most recent report in 2020 found that companies who were like in the top quartile for ethnic and cultural diversity were 36% more likely to have above average profitability compared to those in the bottom quartile. And those in the top quartile for gender diversity were 25% more likely to outperform others on profitability. So even by capitalist standards or, pro-corporate standards, having a diverse workforce, having different faces in the room makes you more money. And it's not just McKinsey. Harvard Business Review study in 2013 showed that diversity can drive innovation. Credit Suisse found that companies with more women in senior management roles perform better in terms of return on equity and stock performance. Deloitte, the business case for diversity. Diverse organizations are 1.7 times more likely to be innovation leaders in their industries. Companies with inclusive cultures have a 2.3 times higher cash flow per employee. So this is a long list of statistics and research to say, as much as Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of these right-wing headbangers want diversity, equity, and inclusion, or just being a fair employer to be part of the culture wars, there is no debate around this. If you have diverse functioning workforces, they deliver more money. So like they're shooting themselves in the foot. They haven't done that much on it anyway. So yeah, I think it's gone under the radar, or at least it's just been straight reported. I think we should be thinking about what the response is.
I find it intriguing, the degree to which these people are like, oh yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And your point about it's better for the bottom line, I think what that shows is they hate black people more than they like money, which is amazing because they do like money. There are a few things that really interest me about this story. The first is that what this shows is that politics works and matters. These people had no commitment to DEI, really, but they had to implement these things because that was the mood. And so a range of campaigns and lobbying and so on that has gone on resulted in some of this stuff, including, say, Walmart. They have also rolled back their DEI. One of the things they're getting rid of was a scheme they introduced in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. So there was pressure there, and that's why they did it. The other thing that's really interesting to me in the way that it's reported is that people accurately describe the impetus they want to get in with Trump as kind of, you know, these woke policies and blah, blah, blah. But they don't actually deal with the kind of accusation. Now, there are loads of studies and they all show that things are not harder, have not made it harder for white men to get jobs. So what problem is this fixing? And finally, I guess the notion that, you know, this is in some way an assault on meritocracy. It's like, Jesus, look at the people running our country. The idea that like merit is what gets you somewhere in the West. Come on, don't be silly.
Yeah. And I think like we've seen different stages of it, right? And then that's why in some ways I do feel mixed about DEI and a lot of that language, because it then very quickly is weaponized that, you know, like the accusations thrown at Kamala Harris or like a lot of black and brown people at work that you're somehow a DEI hire. Like I've never sat on an interview panel and someone's been like, well, we should hire them, shouldn't they? Because they're not white. I have worked with a ton of people who've hired their mates, even with no process, even when it wasn't a job they were qualified for. I have worked with a ton of people who can't even notice that everyone they hire and enjoy working with looks almost identical to them. It also just eclipses most of our experience of being alive in the world. And like, let me tell you, being in a diverse workforce isn't necessarily, I mean, that's why the acronym is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hiring people who aren't all like straight and white or British or American, like that doesn't mean that you have a nice time at work. Being the first wave of non-white people in the workplace because someone's decided diversity is important is also kind of stressful. It's also part of this hypocrisy of what we are sold and what we are told, that we live in this meritocratic system and that capitalism is ultimately fair and the people at the top are the ones who are maybe the smartest and the hardest working. Like they're not. They're the ones who were born rich and who are scammers.
So thank you for listening to Over the Top Under the Radar. Remember to like, subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts.
If you want to support the show, please find us by searching Over the Top Under the Radar on Patreon.
You can sign up to our newsletter at overunderpod.com.
And you can connect with us on social media at over_under_pod_.
See you next week.